Hey folks, ORAT community. This is Dan Bird with a midweek update on the stock market. I'm going to make this pretty quick tonight. Just wanted to review some of the things that we talked about on Sunday. Let me share my screen. If anyone's interested in looking at the newsletter that I put out last weekend, just go to breakpointtrading.net and click on this box right here. And you can get the newsletter. And if you want to be reminded, go to the very bottom and sign up for the $0 subscription. Doesn't ask for a credit card, and we don't share emails. So you'll just get a reminder that the newsletter is available. All right, so first thing I want to talk about is on Sunday, I mentioned that I thought we probably would get a rally this week. Looks like that's exactly what we got. This is the S&P, by the way. This is from the homepage of breakpointtrading.net website. Everything on the homepage is free, so there's no subscription needed. S&P, NASDAQ, Dow, Bitcoin, and the dollar are right there on the right-hand side. So S&P is what I just clicked on. You can see right here, this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So 3 up days, although we gave some back today. It actually traded down more and then bounced back, but ended up lower than the open. So what I said on Sunday was watch this area right here that I have highlighted. That is where the 21-day and the 50-day roughly converge around 5,100. And we made it to 50.89, almost 50.90, so 10 points away from 5,100. I don't know if it'll try to continue tomorrow, but it looks like it's perhaps going to roll over. And that's kind of what I expected. So as I mentioned before, what defines a new downtrend is lower lows and lower highs. So we have a lower low. Now we have to see if this is going to make a lower high or break out of the previous high. And I was saying that I think that's right around 5,100 if we do make a lower high. So keep an eye on that. That's what I was kind of expecting was going to happen. There's the NASDAQ, same thing, didn't even quite make it to the 21. So it might also start to roll over, especially with the news today. So the next thing I want to look at is earnings. And actually to do that, I'm going to go to the charts page on the website, and down at the bottom, we have the Magnificent Seven right here. So first, let's look at Tesla because they already reported. So we'll see how Tesla's doing. And before I do that, I'm going to go up here and go look at earnings. So on the homepage, you can go to earnings right here, the earnings link. And we can open the earnings. We'll look at the NASDAQ 100, focus on that. And we'll look at reported earnings. So this is, let's see, past week. That's this week, past month. Let's see if I can find Tesla in here. Let me do this by searching on the symbol. So Tesla is right down here. There we go. Tesla actually missed by almost 20%. So this column is the percent difference. So it's earnings versus estimated earnings. So they missed by 20% on earnings. So now let's take a look at Tesla, the chart over here on the charts page, and Tesla is right here. And there's Tesla. You can see sold off at earnings. 423 was the earnings, so that was actually right here. It actually then bounced back, so it's actually making a comeback. So that's good news for Tesla. Looks pretty good. Now Meta just reported tonight. So first, let's take a look at earnings. We'll look at upcoming earnings for NASDAQ 100. And here's Meta. Actually, let me go back to reported earnings again. After the close. So it's not posted what they did, but if we look at the Meta chart, back here, right here, we can see that today, before the earnings, it sold off a little bit, ended up right on the 50-day moving average. But then what happened once they reported? So they're down 16% after hours. And that puts it at 412 after hours. So if it were to stay there at 412, this is a Keltner channel. So usually when it gets up into the extreme areas, it doesn't stay there long. But the extreme in this case, 412, is all the way down here, which is at the weekly Bollinger Band. It's a little bit above it. So 412 would put it way down here. Right about there. So if it were to open right now, it would gap down to right there. You can see the open gap over here. In fact, the open gap is right about 400. So potentially it could end up selling off down to that level, which is right here. So right down to 400. So right now, after hours, it's at 412. Could very easily sell off to 400, which would close this gap. Now, if you're a believer in Meta, and I'm not sure if they beat or missed. Actually, let's go back and take a look at it again here. Looks like they might have beat on earnings and revenue. That's Q4. So I'm not sure if tonight's is reflected here. But based on the fact that they sold off by 16%, it looks like they either missed or they gave some bad news, which is what Zuber mentioned on the call on Sunday, that these big tech companies may very well hit their earnings and revenue, but then guide lower for next year, which will make it sell off as well. So let's keep an eye on that tomorrow. That could be what happens. Could be good down here to close the gap. And then if you're a believer in Meta, might be a good time to buy, because it could just take off just like Tesla did. But we'll see. Could just continue to sell off as well. If I actually look at this from a relative strength viewpoint, you can see that Meta had been underperforming its own industry group, even though it's outperforming the S&P, and its industry group is outperforming its sector. So all those look good, other than Meta itself underperforming the internet group. And in fact, if we look back here for last night, I haven't updated these yet for tonight, but if we look at last night, the internet group actually was positive for the night, but the day before it was negative. So a lot of indecision going on here. I expect this probably is going to sell off pretty hard, because this is where Meta is located. Now, what happened? What else do we have coming up? Upcoming earnings tomorrow. We have Comcast, Honeywell, Google reporting tomorrow after the close, Intel after the close, Microsoft after the close. So a lot of very important tech names reporting after the close tomorrow. If they do the same thing, have good earnings, but guide lower, same thing could happen with them. So let's take a look at Google real quick. Here's what Google looks like. It's making a comeback. Looks good, actually. If we look at the Keltners, it's not quite oversold or at an extreme yet. And from a relative strength perspective, it's outperforming its own industry group, which is the same one that Meta is in. So it's actually outperforming better than Meta. So I suspect they might actually have some good earnings when they report tomorrow. The other one is, let's see, Google. Microsoft is another important one right here. So Microsoft also is making a comeback and had a big sell-off. So if you're looking for strong stocks that are having a pullback and then starting to recover, there's a perfect example right there. In fact, when it gets over the 5-day, that's the time to buy. Yesterday would have been the time to buy. So here's how it's doing versus its own industry group. it's actually outperforming pretty significantly the industry group. So I think Microsoft might actually have some good earnings. So this one might take off even more. It's always dicey going into earnings. So I'm not saying that's the time to buy. I'm just saying that it looks like they might do pretty well. And then let's see, Intel. What does Intel look like? Intel's had a big, huge sell-off. So again, if you're a believer in the company, although all the moving averages are below. So in general, this doesn't look good. It's been underperforming its own industry group, which is the same one that NVIDIA is in, semiconductors, since all the way back here in January of 24. So all the way back here, it's been underperforming. So I'm probably expecting Intel might have some issues, might have some troubles tomorrow. What else? What else is reporting? GE Healthcare, PayPal, AMD. This is an interesting one. AMD had a big sell-off and then it's trying to make a comeback. Sold off, had a nice rally in the beginning of the day, sold off at the end of the day. If we look at this on a actual candle, you can see it right there. So it had two nice rallies, 2 days in a row, but not with a lot of conviction. So both days they kind of ended at the same place they started, even though they started a little bit higher. But today it tried to continue that run, but ended up selling off instead. So that's not a good sign. And look at how it's doing versus its own peers, its industry group, semiconductors. It's been underperforming since middle of March. So AMD might have some trouble as well. And even though NVIDIA doesn't report until May 22nd, remember I said they many times will start rallying into earnings, and it looked like that was going to be the case. They started to rally last 2 days, just like AMD, but also just like AMD, they went up and just about touched the 50 and 21 day right there, and then sold off. You can look at that on the candle right here, sold off all the way into the close, in fact. So this one, in fact, let me take a look at after hours on NVIDIA. Yeah, it's down another 1%, another $9 after hours. So NVIDIA looked like it was ready to rally, but instead it turned around and started lower. So going back to my original thesis of this perhaps being a bear trap, markets rallying, went up to a resistance point just below the 50 and 21 day moving average. It didn't quite get there. So it might actually try to, no, I think tomorrow it might probably reverse. Just looking at the after hours on a lot of these, it might just reverse. In fact, after hours on Google, down 3%, another $5. After hours on Microsoft, down almost 2%, down another $7. After hours on Intel, that's flat, pretty much flat. So Intel's just kind of hanging in there. But based on all of that, I think what I was saying that, we could get a rally up to the resistance and then it will turn around. That will be a lower high and we will go lower than the previous lower low and the market will continue to move lower. That's what I mentioned on Sunday, and that looks like what's about to play out. So be careful when you jump into these rallies, when you see things on the internet saying, buy the dip, the sell-off is over. The sell-off really has just started, perhaps has just started. And if we go back to my newsletter from last week, I think it was, where I talked about this right here, the stages of the market. There's an uptrend stage, which we already went through. We had a short distribution stage. And then the next stage is a downtrend. Downtrends, you can see, are marked by lower lows and lower highs. Lower lows, lower highs. So be careful with jumping into these rallies if we're in a downtrend. If you're very quick and very agile, it could pay off, but be prepared for the downtrend to continue. So we'll see if that happens in the rest of the week. We've got, let's see, we've got PCE on Friday, which will be really important. And we have GDP tomorrow, which might be important too. So all those things could move the market. All right, be safe trading out there. I just wanted to give you guys an update of where we were and show you some of the earnings, big earnings coming up this week. And so far, everything looks like it's selling off after hours tonight. So tomorrow might be a ugly open. We'll see how it ends, how it closes after that. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Safe trading, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.